Welcome back to Plantfield. So, this is another on my own episode, another Ask Me Anything. Reason for that is I've done two prior. This is only my third episode on my own, which is surprising. I don't know why I haven't done this earlier, but you know, I think there's quite a few questions that you guys normally have, and we're still getting through them. Like, I've still got questions from the time before and the time before that, plus a whole load of new ones, which you want answered. Whether that be about, nutrition, whether that be about mindfulness, veganism, the podcast, just about me in general, travel. Such a large variety of different things. And, I really love the fact that we have this community here. And I love the fact that I've created a community that's very supportive of each other about dietary choices and dietary patterns. And, I think it's doing a disservice if some of you have questions that I haven't answered because maybe they haven't been, maybe they haven't ended up on a podcast topic with a certain guest, or the fact that maybe like when I do a Q&A on Instagram, 60 seconds doesn't give it enough nuance to what it actually means. So this is kind of where we just sit, chat, and get through the questions that you want to know about me, about nutrition, about veganism, about every single different thing. And today, once again, I think how many questions we've got is it's about 11 or 12. It's going to be another short episode. It's not going to be another hour and 15, hour and a half like it is with some guests. Sometimes 2 hours. It's just me with you. So, without further ado, I guess, how do I introduce this? Welcome to Plantfield. I'm your host, Callum Weir. Okay, so the first question. Do you drink? I do not drink. I coming up to a year, mid-July, sober. Over the years, I would say that I have had a bit of a problem with alcohol. Growing up in the UK, we got a big drinking culture scene. We got a lot of binge drinking culture, and I got drawn into that at a very young age, in which then ended up moving into my 20s, still doing the same. I went and worked on party islands where, you're getting drunk every single night, partying and sleeping 2 hours maybe. And then carried that on also throughout my 20s when I'd left those islands as well. That it became a bit of an issue where I couldn't say no, but it also wasn't the fact that if I couldn't say no, there was no stopping me. I would then, it wouldn't just be one, it'd be two, it'd be three. There wasn't that point where, where you feel slightly tipsy and fun. It was like, let's go all the way until you get kind of paralytic. And that didn't bode well for me. It became very expensive. It became an issue at some points. And last year, I was like, I want out. And I luckily had that courage to be able to be like, hey, I can do this. Let's do this. And just bit the bullet and stopped. And it's been one of the best things I've done. Like, I feel healthier. My skin feels healthier. I don't feel hungover, ever. Amazing that. My health becomes so much better. My sleep's become so much better. Everything has become much better. And I think what I have realised, and someone said this the other day on another YouTube video, that I was mixing my happiness and my pleasure for years and years and years. So from 16 to 32. 16 to 32, I was mixing my happiness with pleasure to the fact that I was just doing things pleasurable because they made me feel good at the time, but realistically the next day I had a hangover and didn't feel good. And I'd equate that with happiness. Now, did that make me happy? No. It didn't make me happy in the slightest. I just thought it did, but it was just a process, a feeling that I had in the moment, which was pleasure. The same as, some people will go out and have a McDonald's knowing that they're going to feel shit the next day or 2 hours after, but because at the moment they're just getting that pleasure. And I was confusing happiness with pleasure for at least 20 years of my life, coming up to 20 years of my life. I was, conflating pleasure when really I was looking for happiness, and I didn't know where to find that. So it's been a tough one. It's been a tough year trying to, work out what brings me happiness, because I think when you are stuck with alcohol for so long, and your whole mindset, your whole lifestyle has been overshadowed by drink, and because that making me feel happy, that I don't know if I truly ever knew the things that did make me happy. I don't regret drinking. I wouldn't drink now, not even on a special occasion, as much as I thought that might be a thing, because it was also a social lubricant for me. Like, I'm a very extroverted person, but I think sometimes in crowded rooms or like networking or something, I can not become shy, but I just won't talk because there's so many other people around me. So drink was that thing that was more of a social lubricant that, got me to, speak and talk to a lot more people, especially when you're working on party islands. But yeah, I don't regret drinking. I do know that it has taken over the majority of my life, and I am glad that I have given up. So, on to the next, I guess. Is plant-based yogurt particularly high in protein, health, or full of processed ingredients? Now, I think there's a lot of nuance to this. You can get plant-based yogurts that are high in protein. There's Alpro ones in the UK. I don't know about the States, but I know there is some in the States. I couldn't tell you any brands off by heart. Alpro do a plant yogurt here, and that is full of protein. That being said, when it comes to high in protein, there's not a huge amount, mainly because they're normally made from, like almond milk, or they're coconut based, and coconut doesn't have a huge amount of protein to it. So I wouldn't say plant-based yogurts are particularly protein dense. There's a few of them that are, and there's a few that use other ingredients. So if you find like a soy yogurt, for instance, you're going to get a lot more protein for your buck. But I wouldn't say that they're overly high in protein unless you're going out and finding a protein yogurt. The second part of that question was, are they healthy? And once again, it's nuanced. I would say coconut yogurts are very healthy, soy yogurts are very healthy. But then you see a array of different yogurts on the market. So the ones that may have, an ingredient list of, let's say, 20 things, probably not the best for you. Whereas you've got something that's very much just coconut and maybe a few prebiotics and a few other bits. Normally the healthier version. The same with soy. And I think the Alpro ones, they are protein heavy. I think it's 15 grams per pot. And I don't think they've got a ton of ingredients either. I just think they're made with naturally occurring protein sources and maybe a mixed in like isolate inside. Now, when it comes to processed ingredients, I think what we have to look at there, because it's obviously a very nuanced subject, is the fact that we have processed and then we have ultra processed. Processed doesn't necessarily mean bad. Everything has to go through a process to become what it is. And I think we mix up the terms processed and ultra processed. Ultra processed are things that probably aren't normally found in nature, but also when something's ultra processed doesn't also necessarily mean it's bad. There can be health benefits to ultra processed foods, just not many of them. So when you're looking at a plant yogurt, for instance, yes, there could be some that look like chemistry experiments, and they've probably got a long list. Probably best to stay away from those ones. But if you realistically look at some of them, they should only really have, 6 or 7 ingredients at most. And that may be like a protein isolate. That just might be, live cultures. That might just be the coconut or the coconut cream. The live culture is perfectly fine. Don't worry about that. They are very much just probiotics, which are healthy for the gut, and people like to stick those in there. So it has the same as, let's say, the animal-based version, which is also full of probiotics. So we really want to be looking at what you mean by processed. So if it's, if it's got under, 6, 7 ingredients, I wouldn't be overly bothered. If it's, 10 or above, I just probably wouldn't buy it. But with all of these things, there's always going to be a nuance. So yes, you can find high in protein plant-based yogurts. They are a bit rarer to find, but they are coming out. But that's because everybody is jumping on this protein marketing where everything needs to be protein, protein, protein. They can be healthy. The ones that may be ultra processed can be healthy as long as they are in a well-rounded plant-based diet with varied healthy foods, health promoting foods, such as a wide variety of plants. I don't think I found a plant-based yogurt that I probably wouldn't touch, but maybe that's the places I shop. I have no idea. I can only speak from the terms of the UK as well. I can't speak for America, but I know there's a lot of issues with American produce, and that it's not always healthy, to say the least. But there's the times are changing. Times are changing. What's your go-to meal when you don't have time? So, my go-to meal is, I'm quite a simple eater. I think I get various comments asking what I eat. Please show me what you eat in a day, or do you have any like recipes or any advice? And I have advice, but I'm a very simplistic eater. My breakfasts very much look the same. They're either one of three things. Some things I will change. My lunches very much look the same. They're very much like poke bowls or Buddha bowls or like a pasta dish or something like that. And my evenings are very... They can change, but they normally change on a weekly basis. That being said, if there was one food where I'm lacking time or I don't have a huge amount of time that's going to be nutritious but it's also going to fill me up and I also get the calories that I need and the various micronutrients and nutrients that I need in the body, they'll always go with a burrito. A burrito is such a fast way to get in nutrients, to get in enough calories, and but you can pack them out as well. So for instance, mine would normally be, lettuce, tomato, a bit of rice, black beans, maybe some tofu, maybe some tempeh, some hot sauce, and a few other bits and pieces like, peppers and mushrooms. Something you can quick and easily just stick in a pan, mix around, get out, stick in a burrito, roll up, eat, and if you need to, on the go as well. So burrito would be my go-to. I like things that are quick. I like things that are simple. I don't want to be standing in a kitchen for, an hour cooking. I mean, I don't mind doing it. I do enjoy cooking, but I don't have the largest amount of time. So anything that's quick and easy. And so a burrito. Oh, I missed the avocado. Avocado would also be in there as well. So you're getting everything you need. You got your health, you got your fats, you got your proteins, you got your carbs, and you got your micronutrients. I think burrito is a great one for it. Plus, you can have breakfast burritos, lunch burritos, and dinner burritos. I love a burrito. I think that's my go-to. I know the reason that this got asked was I used to ask this quite a lot on older episodes of the podcast, and somebody has just asked it back. So, are there any supplements or foods that an older person 60 plus should be having? I wouldn't say there's foods in particular. I wouldn't say there's supplements in particular. I think there's nutrients in particular that you would need to look for as you get older. Those are the main ones would be your protein intake. As you get older, muscle starts to deteriorate slightly past the ages of, I think it's 35. So if you're not an active person, your muscle can start to deteriorate. So I'll be saying look after your protein, whether you get that in through food or whether you get that in through food and a shake, not just shakes on their own, would be a great place because, 60 plus, we really need to be looking after our protein requirements as our body needs it to function, as well as our hair, our skin. It really looks after everything within the body. It's not just muscle. Then I would also be looking at calcium. Calcium, I would say, would be for the best at getting more than your recommended allowance, and whether that you be getting that through plants, fruits, even fortified milks. Great way to get your calcium in, because once again with protein you need calcium for it to work, and the same with magnesium. So they would be your three that I would say are the main, is magnesium, protein and calcium would be the ones to look out for the most. Calcium as well, mentioning for obviously bone density. As you get older, bone density will start to wear away, so if you're keeping on top of it you should be fine. Is there any others? Iron. Iron does get lower when you're older, mainly for a female, because you're no longer going through your menstrual cycle. So when you're in a menstrual cycle, it normally goes from 8 milligrams to 18 milligrams. But if you have, and the majority of people I assume would, have finished the menopause, then you can lower it down to 8 milligrams. But I would also say, you know, still look after that, still go higher if you need to. I wouldn't say, I would say 8 is great. Above is optimal. You just want to, you want to make sure you're functioning properly. So yeah, I think another one to really look after, and that's for every stage of life, and people really forget about, is iodine. Iodine is one to look out for. Also omega 3s as well, and omega 3s I would say get from an algae oil, not just hoping from flax seeds and chia seeds. You want something that's really converting your brain, and your conversion rate on chia seeds, flax seeds might be quite low. I literally have got them tested and you don't know. And the conversion rate, it can sometimes be 1 to 5%. If your genetics are shit, if your lifestyle, your food's a bit beige, it can really affect your omega 3. So an algae oil is one of the greatest versions. And I think I always bang on about that. So algae oil, maybe some seaweed, some kombu, some wakame, phytoplankton, all of the above, great sources of omega 3 with DHA and EPA. You don't want to just be relying on ALA and hoping the conversion rate is great. So yeah, those are the mains I would say. There's always going to be others. You should be looking after all nutrients, but as you go 60 plus, they would be my top priority, as well as obviously supplementing B12 if you are eating a whole foods plant-based diet. Best UK city to eat out at? There's two. London being number one. I think London has the largest variety of food and plant-based restaurants maybe on this planet. Everywhere you go there's a plant-based restaurant, there's a vegan restaurant, and I think there's such an array of great foods these days, different cuisines from different cultures, that you can just, and that's from it being such a multicultural country as well, that we get to try these new foods that we may never have tried if we'd never left the country, for instance. So I think I have a few favourites. Jam Delish in, I can't remember where they are now. Are they in Islington? I think they may be. Don't quote me on that. Jam Delish is plant-based Caribbean cuisine, and it's absolutely incredible. They also do a plant-based curried goat, which is wild, because that's something I used to eat a long, long time ago, and absolutely outstanding. Their food, just amazing. The flavour, the taste, incredible. You've got tofu vegan. Tofu vegan's amazing. I went there a few weeks ago with a few friends. It was great. Obviously you got your nice little junk food restaurants that we go to once in a while. Mallow is good. I'm trying to think. There's so many. There's a brand new Ethiopian one I want to go to as well. I keep seeing that online and it looks fantastic. And one day I will go there. But I think London is the number one, and then I would say Brighton. Brighton has so many options, restaurants. And then I think after that we'd be going maybe up north to maybe like Manchester, I would say. Some of these little towns also surprise you as well. Like you go into little towns in Wales or, Scotland or England, Ireland as well, where you'll find just small little cafes that actually blow out the water these big places that you see in big cities. And it's great to see those people are still thriving as well. So yeah, London, Brighton, probably Manchester, maybe Liverpool. I can't really speak for the rest of the UK as much as I've been to the rest of the UK. This is a while ago, so I can't really say what their plant-based scene is like. Okay, cyanocobalamin versus methylcobalamin. So the cobalamins are your B12. So these are your B12 supplements. Which one's better? So they're both great, but I think I mentioned this the other day and created a bit of confusion in the 60 seconds that I had. So there's always obviously a bit of nuance. So they're both different types of B12. I myself go for methylcobalamin, sorry. That is the more active form. That's the more natural form of B12, which I would take in a supplement. And I think, the body reacts and absorbs that more, which I've read in the literature, and I would say is still a strong case to be taking that. Then there's cyanocobalamin, which isn't absorbed as well because it is a synthetic version. That's not to say all our bodies don't. I just think when in comparison to the two, cyanocobalamin might not be the best option and methyl being the better option. However, both are great. Both will give you the B12 you need. I mix and match between the both. I have both in my cupboard. I would say methyl is the superior version from the research. However, I haven't read that research in a while and things may have changed. So, cyanocobalamin, methylcobalamin. Cyanocobalamin, more synthetic. Methyl, more active, more natural. I would say either one's fine. Just make sure you're getting, 1,000 micrograms per week. So whether you get that in one tablet and you take that every Monday, for instance, or you have 250 micrograms and you take one every day or every 2 days. Just get the B12 in. If you are plant-based, if you're vegan, if you're pescatarian, if you're omnivore, if you're anyone. Everyone should be taking B12 because we now live in a system where B12 is not really available. The soil, B12 comes from soil. It goes from cobalt-rich soil, which then goes into cobalamin, and then created, or would have been eaten by us with our unwashed fruits and veg back in the day, and also was given to animals. However, we live in a food system these days where we have soil depletion, so soil is not as great as it used to be, unfortunately. So I would say for anybody, B12 supplementation is a must. If you are getting it through an animal, if you are getting it through the middleman, just to let you know, they are still supplemented as well. It's very rare that any livestock isn't supplemented. What do you say to people who try to make meat better by saying it's more nutrient dense? Well, while it is more nutrient dense, I can't lie about that, it is more nutrient dense in certain parts. There is also nuance to it. Once again, there's cases to be made that just because something's more nutrient dense, that it's better for you. It's the same as the appeal to nature fallacy, that just because something's natural doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you. Snake venom's natural. It's not great for you. Too much water isn't great for you. Too much oxygen isn't great for you. All these things can kill you. The same with things that are nutrient dense. You've got meat. Just because it's a high protein bioavailability doesn't necessarily mean it's not linked with various other different factors like saturated fats and cholesterol that can help, which can help heighten different risks in the body. So while some animal products may be more nutrient dense, they may be more bioavailable, it doesn't mean they're necessarily better for you. So we have to really look at what we're talking about. If it is protein, we know that if all 9 amino acids are matched exactly the same on any diet, that there is absolutely zero difference if you're looking to build muscle, for instance. We know with calcium that many people are lactose intolerant, so they have to look for other sources as well as ethical dilemmas as well. So just because calcium comes from a cow doesn't mean it's good for our body. Because while, yes, it is very nutrient dense in calcium, a lot of people are highly allergic to it. So, once again, doesn't always mean amazing. There are also going to be plants that are more nutrient dense than the animal products. For instance, vitamin C. So, just because something is more nutrient dense doesn't necessarily mean it's the better option. Obviously, if we take ethics out the way of it, if we take, and we just put it down on the table, there's going to be bioavailability in different foods that are going to be easier for us and harder for some people. For instance, some people can't absorb B12, they would have to get it injected. And they can't get it from, meat, nor can they get it from plants or a supplement. So they have to get it injected. So everybody's very bio-individual. So meat necessarily isn't better because it's more bioavailable in some way, shape or form in some nutrients. It's just how our body reacts, and obviously nutrient absorption within the body. We all have nutrient absorption issues. Every single one of us will have something that we're going to be slightly lower on, and that could be down to our body's not absorbing it as well as other nutrients. That can be down to lifestyle, genetics and various other factors. So you can't really make the argument that one thing's better than the other. If we're talking about nutrition, because everybody absorbs differently, but it's just working around that. So for instance, there's conversion rates. So, ALA to EPA and DHA, not the greatest conversion rate, but the more nutrient dense version of omega-3 would be algae. It wouldn't be the fish, it would be the algae. The same with selenium. Selenium, the richer source on the planet would be a Brazil nut. We look at zinc foods, for instance. They do have, some may have phytates, which means they may be hard to absorb, but cooking them will make it easier. The same with iron. A great example is heme iron versus non-heme iron. Heme iron is more bioavailable. However, can cause various different issues within the body and can cause things like iron overload because our body doesn't know how to stop absorbing it. If you're not taking the right steps to maximize absorption, then you may be low. So, we'd eat vitamin C rich foods, we would have iron rich meals, we would avoid caffeine before and after the meal about an hour each way to maximize that absorption. So we can't say meat is better but it's more nutrient dense because there's nuance to it. There's always going to be, yes, it's more nutrient dense, but it can do this, it can lead to this. If you're having too much of it, there can be various issues, but at the same time, that's very much the same on plants as well, if you're not looking after yourself. So just because something's more nutrient dense doesn't mean it's better. New content, something's changed. Why the hat, and has it helped? I have changed up my content on Instagram and TikTok. It's very different. I feel like this content is more me. Beforehand, I seemed to be, as I would say, pandering to an audience, was giving people what they want to hear and what they want to see. I kind of lost my identity with that and kind of got lost and was like, that isn't me. I'm being a bit too soft. And there's nothing wrong with being a bit too soft on people, but, it was more just being a bit agreeable. I changed it up. I was like, I'm going to become more me. I'm going to become the person that is very much how I am. I can be very blunt. And it's worked. It's worked wonders. People are resonating with it more. They like the fact that it's more straight talk. It's no bullshit. And it's very much like it is what it is. And yeah, there's some things that need saying. There's also things that are said throughout the whole nutrition industry that aren't exactly right because nobody's giving the actual facts. And I'm not saying I'm the only person giving the facts. I'm just saying there's a few people out there that would be like, for instance, let's say the ALA conversion rate, for instance, being low. But I'd be like, hey, it's just flax seeds, it's just chia seeds, it's just whatever seeds. And that's great because that is truthful. but then there's nuance to it. There's a lot of different variations of what that can look like for different people. You can't just tell somebody to eat this and they're going to be absolutely fine, because that's disingenuous. And I think it then discredits and also confuses people. And we want people to live and thrive as best as they can on a plant-based diet. So only giving them half the information is, is giving that disservice. Giving all the information is better, but also I feel like it needs to be given somewhat a bit harder than softer. When I was doing it, when it was softer, people weren't really paying attention. Now that I've upped and become more myself, people are paying attention. And, I've seen the account grow a lot in the last week or so, 2 weeks from having that. Or having that kind of shift. Now, I'm not saying my way is right. Some people have found it patronising. Other people do love it. I'm just saying what I need to. I'm just giving the facts as they need to be. I'm, throwing out the disparities between foods. And if people listen, they listen. If they don't, they don't. I'm not saying I'm wrong or right for doing it in that way, but it works. Some people may just want that little kick up the arse, and it feels like they're getting that. I've had a few comments being like, hey, it feels like you're telling me off, but that's the kind of thing I need. And if that's what someone needs to, become healthier, to take control of their health, that's absolutely fine. There's people out there that can give really in-depth information, and people will listen because that's how they are. Like your Simon Hills, for instance. Very intellectual, very breaking down the science in a well soft-spoken manner, which is great, and I resonate with that. I love it. However, that wasn't working for me when I was having an approach that was slightly like that, and I think maybe that was down to not being me. I wasn't being myself. I was trying to be someone I'm not. So I accepted that, became more authentic, and it worked. I think in the last week, it's grown 6,000 to 7,000 new followers on that. So I think people can tell when you're being genuine and when you're not. And I think giving the information in a way that I have been has been a game changer, and I think it's really resonated with people. And yes, I've lost some people from that, lost some followers. But I have to stay authentic to myself. I have to stay authentic also to the nutrition that I'm giving. I also need to stay well grounded and give the actual information as it should be given. And there's people out there that are giving that information. There's just a lot of people that aren't. And I do think that's disingenuous. And I can say I have been like that in the past. I'm not going to say I'm any hero right there. Is there anyone you look towards for nutrition advice? I do. As I mentioned, Simon Hill. Simon Hill is great for nutrition advice. I think he really breaks down the science in such a perfectly beautiful way. People really resonate with that. People really want that intellectual version of the conversation, and he puts that forward so much. I love his show. I think it's great, and I hope Simon has the best success. I mean, I don't think he needs it. He is smashing it. I think there's a few of the plant-based health professionals, but I also look towards such as Gemma Newman's, your Alan Desmond's. That's not to say I want to live in an echo chamber, though. I don't just live and listen to plant-based nutrition. I do listen to all nutrition in general, because there's things that I should always be aware of. There's always changes in the science, and why I come at this from an ethical point of view, I know that nutrition science is in what I do trust. So why everything I do is for ethical reasons. There's some things that I may need to take into consideration that isn't in the vegan plant-based echo chamber that I could end up creating if I only listen to plant-based doctors and not always the science. And that's once again why I think Simon Hill is a great person for that, is that he doesn't just talk to plant-based people. He talks to people and gets the story from all sides to then make a well-rounded view of the science. Do you implement any advice you get on the podcast from guests? I would love to be able to implement every piece of advice I get from that podcast, but I have too much advice from that podcast. There's things I have implemented, especially when it comes to, protein. There's things I've implemented when it's come to, eating more fibrous foods, looking after your microbiome, and different ways to do that. Sleep hygiene, even mindset. I think we've had such a variety of different people that there's so much knowledge to be taken out of every single episode. However, I can't, as much as I absorb it all, I can't implement every single piece. So yeah, when it comes to nutrition, there's definitely things that I implement. There's also things I don't implement, mainly because sometimes the science says something slightly different to what that person said, and that's not to say that person's lying. I just want to know that there's more to talk about. There's more to see than what meets the eye, maybe. Some things I just physically can't implement, but I like to try as much as possible. So whether that be mindset, whether that be sleep, whether that be nutrition, whether that be the smaller little habits that people have that make their life a lot easier, I will try to implement those and see if they work for me. Sometimes they don't always work for me because obviously everybody's very bio-individual, so what works for some people won't work for others. And that's also fine. What am I cooking for date night? What am I cooking for date night? That is a hard one. There's so many different meals. However, maybe some rosemary and maple glazed sauté potatoes with some garlic asparagus and a seitan Wellington, but with a mushroom de sel around it. So whatever the Wellington's made out of, then the mushroom layer, and then the Wellington with a peppercorn sauce. I think that's what I'd make. I think that's everything for this round. I think that's 11 of those questions. We've still got a ton more. But we're going to keep this one short and simple. And this is episode 3 of the Ask Me Anythings. So, next time it will be me and somebody else again. Just in case you don't want to just hear my voice consistently, there will be someone else involved again next time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for your questions. Next week, we'll be back. Hope to see you there. Peace and plants.